think Jack just joined us, guys.
Yay!
Hi, Jack.
Where's Jack?
He's on mute.
Oh, hang on. Let
Can you hear me
fix
now?
But
it.
he plays
Yeah, I
in
can
so
hear
it's
ya.
perfect.
Hey guys, how are you? Sorry about this, time-wise.
That's okay. How are you doing?
I'm doing the best I can, whatever it'll allow, you know?
Right? So I think we'll get started. We appreciate you joining us today.
Sassy, before you get started, I was just going to say, I think the panel coming up is the last one of the day, so go ahead and take some extra time with Jack, and
Okay.
go ahead and give yourself an extra 20 minutes. We'll start. I'll send a note out to everybody that we'll start at 5:20 for the last panel.
You don't
Okay.
have to
All
say
right.
hi to
Sounds
me, Dan.
good.
I'm already here.
All right.
If I can just say, Jack, it's an honor to have you with us. I've got to take care of some stuff, but thank you again for being with us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So how is the coronavirus treating you and everything?
Like everybody else, it's lockdown time, isn't it?
Yep. Haven't been going anywhere.
No, you know, we got a lot of things to do in Nevada and stuff, and we just can't, you know, everybody's stationary where you're at, you know?
Right. Well, I think we.
Then I went through this hand surgery. So I'm like
Oh no! What
mummified.
happened? You had surgery?
Yeah, I ruptured some tendons in my hand. I had to fix that, so.
Were
It's
you
not
doing
one
some
thing, it's another.
somersaults?
Yeah, doing somersaults. Yeah.
He was trying to learn to fly again. That's what it was.
Right.
That's
You
what
were
it
trying to
was.
learn to fly.
Yeah.
Well, I think we have some questions for you, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about your early life, and before you got into acting, you were a boxer. How did you get into boxing?
Well, I was actually playing football first, and when I was due to play with, and it was at a time when I was playing football, was at a time when they had no hardship cases. You couldn't play pro until your class graduated college. So a lot of us I was grabbed by the Jets, and I had to play in a league on the East Coast with a bunch of other ball players until we were eligible to play pro. And then when it was time to go up and play pro, I wanted to go down and play with Philadelphia because they had a lot of friends of mine were down there. They had a new owner and everything, but they hired a terrible coach, and I didn't like what he did he was trading guys away and stuff like that. And Muhammad Ali had just won the title. And I said to some friends of mine, I could beat that guy. And they said, great idea. Next thing I know, I'm in the gymnasium. And started my boxing career in 1966. So.
Well, we know that you had an impressive record as a boxer, and you came close.
It worked out very well, you know, for a period of time. But I was my own worst enemy, actually, because I would just take fights on a week notice and stuff. Because I got too much. Sometimes when you have too much ability, you know, you just you take things for granted. And I had a disease called acromegaly, which I wasn't supposed to be boxing at all.
Oh no!
It's a tumor of the pituitary gland and caused growth hormone and stuff in your body. So that tempered some things. And then when I retired from boxing, I went in the movie business because they had tried to get me in the movie business several times during my boxing career. And when they came to me with Farewell, My Lovely with Robert Mitchum, they went out and did a screen test, and Mitchum said, it's either him or I don't do the movie. And so I blame it all on Robert Mitchum.
Oh, yeah? Now, did you ever get to meet Muhammad Ali?
Oh, yeah, we were very good friends. We were signed to fight 4 times.
Oh, really? And you never got a fight, did you?
No. We were signed 4 times, but the different circumstances happened and stuff, and just the politics of boxing.
Oh, wow. So I think you answered already how you got into the field of acting after you did boxing. You said that in boxing they tried to get you into acting, correct?
Well, I was up in Boston, fighting out of Boston for a while, and Steve McQueen did a picture called The Thomas Crown Affair up there. And when he came into Boston, we looked after him, took care of him, and he and I became very good friends. And he said, you know, come down on a set, I'll put you in the movie. You got to come back to Hollywood. We'll have a great time. Ba-bang, ba-bang. And I just said, I don't think so. I was undefeated as a heavyweight, and I saw boxing as a career and stuff. And so I passed on it. And then we became friends. He used to call me on the phone. You got to come to Hollywood. But then in 1969, I knocked out the #2 heavyweight in the world, Manuel Ramos, and I was looking for a title fight then, and they offered me the Great White Hope with James Earl Jones.
Oh, wow.
And I was just, all I had to do was sign the contract. It was a done deal. But it meant going to Spain for 6 months. And I said, you know, I'm looking at a title shot, and you want me to leave the country and go to Spain for 6 months. And so I passed on that picture, and it made some people a little bit unhappy because I was supposed to do it. They were trying to get me off the street, and some people from the East Coast, friends of mine. And so I passed on it, and then I retired from boxing a few years later, and they offered me Farewell My Lovely, and here I am, 45 years later, still clocking the clock with, you know.
Well, that's good. Now, Farewell, My Lovely, you were, and that was your first film, correct?
First film, yeah. Worked out
And-
very, very well. It's a very, I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a very good film.
I have not. I'm going to have to watch it.
Oh, no, you should watch it. It's actually a very, very good movie.
And Mitchum, did he have a huge impact on you, correct?
Oh, yeah. Robert was like my mentor. He just, you know, took me by the hand and showed me things that, all the technical aspects of what you should do. And acting's a funny deal, you know. The truth of the matter is either you have it or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And the camera either loves you or it doesn't. And I just was very fortunate that I had that presence on screen that worked. And, you know, and actually, Farewell My Lovely, if I had done what everybody does in the business, and Johnny Carson, Mitchum had set up for me to do the Johnny Carson show, and I would have got nominated for supporting actor that year.
Oh, wow.
And I just, I met with Johnny Carson, and the show was live, and I turned him down because I knew if I got on stage, they were going to ask me about my father and my past, and I was going to have to say, "Where's the men's room?" And he said, "You would leave?" I said, "Yeah." And it was a foolish thing for me to do because Hollywood, who cared? Nobody cares. Everybody eats
Right.
that stuff up. And I just didn't realize that I didn't want the exposure, so to say. And so I turned it down, and you know, it still worked out okay. I did King Kong and one picture after the other, and Superman made us iconic actors, and it worked out. It was, I mean, I've done some great pictures, and I liked them all. Every one I did because I liked them. Turned down a lot of pictures, which I probably shouldn't have done, but I did because I didn't like the scripts.
Right. Now, do you have a favorite memory from any of the movies that you've done?
Farewell My Lovely was a great memory because of Mitchum and the cast, Charlotte Rampling, and it was just a great group of people. Harry Dean Stanton, Anthony Zerbe, John Ireland. It was a great film. So I have a lot of great memories from that. And King Kong was a great film to do because of Jessie Lang. That was her first picture. And of course, the Superman movies were, we became like a family. You know, we had you're working with Marlon Brando and Gene Hackman. And I just finished doing a picture with Hackman called March or Die. So it was the second picture, third picture that I did with him. And
Oh, wow.
Terrence Stamp is a brilliant actor. Sarah is brilliant. You know, we just were very lucky that the cast ensemble in Superman was extremely good, you know. And the director, Richard Donner, was brilliant. So the picture worked out very well. And then I did Baltimore Bullet was a good picture, and with Jimmy Coburn and Omar Sharif. And so I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of great actors in my career. And it's worked out quite well.
Well, good. Now, before playing Non in Superman, the movie, you turned down a lot of parts that were offered to you. These roles
Yeah.
included the character of Jaws in the James Bond movies. Why did you go with those roles, and what was it about them, or excuse me, why did you not go with those roles, and what was it about them that just didn't appeal to you?
I was doing, I had signed to do March or Die with Gene Hackman and Catherine Deneuve and Max von Sydow and the young Italian actor who was very prominent in Europe, Terence Hill. And it was the same producer that did Farewell My Lovely, Elliot Kastner. So, and they offered me, Cubby Broccoli and his son came to see me in LA and sat with my agent. They tried to talk me into doing this picture, the Bond picture, and I didn't really like the script. I didn't like playing that type of character. I wanted to get away from that. I didn't want to get caught into that mold. And I had sat down with Mitchum. I was having lunch with Mitchum that day, actually, when we were celebrating his birthday, and he said to me, "Do you like the script?" I said, "No." He said, "And don't do it." So I turned them down, and they were kind of disappointed. And then Superman came up while I was doing March or Die. The Superman movie came to light, and it was a role that I really liked because when we were down in Spain, Hackman and I, and they flew us up to London to meet with Richard Donner on Superman, and Donner and I discussed the fact that Non was to be a mute guy. The character itself he was a brilliant scientist who they lobotomized and became a mute. And they said, "How do you feel about playing that type of character?" And I said, "I really embrace it because Jackie Gleason was a friend of mine. He did a picture called Gigo that he won an Oscar for, playing a deaf, dumb mute. And I said, if I ever got an opportunity to do that, I would embrace the role." And the fact that, Terrence was a vicious general, Sarah was a man-eater, somebody had to relate to kids. So I took this brutish character and I played him like a child, learning how to use my eyes and learning how to do things. And we pulled it off pretty good. It worked pretty well.
Yeah. So how did you actually get the role for Non in Superman?
They came to me and asked me to do it.
Well, that's great, huh?
Farewell My Lovely is a great film, and it set me a precedent in the industry. And every role I did thereafter, I did well. So I was very fortunate. And like I said, acting is Mitchum really opened my eyes up to what the deal is really about. And it's I remember the very first day we ever went to work, and he arranged to pick me up, and we drove down to the set together, and he had me laughing the whole time all the way going down. And we got on the set, and I was walking on the very first time ever walking on a movie set. And he looked at me and he said, "You read that script, kid?" And I said, "Read it. I know your role, Charlotte's role, this guy's role, that guy. I know it backwards and forward." He said, "Good, throw it in the trash can." I said, "What?" He said, "Throw it, and don't let me catch you doing what thousands of people in this town do, acting. Just be yourself. Take this character, put yourself in it, and walk down the street like the character. But let it be you." And that's what I did. And it
That's
worked
some good
out pretty
advice.
well.
I like that.
No, he was right on the money, And I remember the first shot we ever did, and they were moving the cameras around. And I looked at him and I said, "What's the deal now? What's going on?" He said, "You really don't know, do you?" I said, "What am I asking you for?" He said, "That's it, kid. That's the enchilada." I said, "This is all there is to this stuff?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Man, I'm a star."
Yeah, you are.
And he, and he laughed, and he said, and I asked him what the definition of a star was. And he said, "It's a word called presence, young man. Either you have that presence on screen or you don't." He said, "You take people like Brando and, Gregory Peck and stuff, when they do a picture, they can do any role they want. Everybody knows who they are because they have a permanent presence on screen. And then you take a person like Bill Holden, who was a very good actor, but people would see a picture he did and they'd be walking outside saying, 'Why, so-and-so, he was really good at that. What was his name?' Didn't have that certain presence that people had. And it's and the camera follows you, it loves you, it embraces you. So You know, and I learned how to look right straight through the camera, not look out of the. Mitchum taught me all that, and it worked out very well. You know. Thank
Good.
heavens.
Now, I know yesterday we talked with Aaron Smolinski, and he wanted us to ask you about the time that everybody didn't get paid on Superman, I think it was.
Gee, they had. We were in London in about 6 weeks, I guess, and then it was raining and it was dismal, and I had written a script that I wanted to do. In fact, we're just getting ready to do it after 40 years later. And I figured I had a lot of money in the bank, so I was going to get on a plane and go home, talk to my accountant and a few people to set up a few things on this other picture. Because I had, for the first time, like 3 or 4 days in a row off. It was the first break that we got. And I did something you're not supposed to do, jump on a plane without telling anybody.
Uh-oh.
Because, well, you're a principal actor, and God forbid something happens to the plane.
Right.
They're out an actor, you know. So I flew back to Los Angeles, and I got on the phone to my accountant, and no cell phones in those days, so I was on a payphone in Beverly Hills, and she said to me, well, we have a bunch of checks here, she said, but no money. I said, what are you talking about? She said, there's a lot of paper, but no money, because the Salkinds were paying us with what they call nondescript checks. They had to be sit in the bank and be verified back and forth, and it took over a month for them to do that. And I said, well, that's a bunch of bull. So I hung the phone up and I called collect to Pinewood Studios to Pierce Spangler. And I said, he said, well, what are you doing in Los Angeles? You're supposed to be here. You got to go to work on Monday. I said, well, you know, I got a little problem. I said, doctor says to me that I got this pain in my back, and if I don't get some money in my bank account soon, I won't be able to leave treatment. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, I got a bunch of paper in my bank with no money. So I don't understand that. I've been working every day. How come I'm not being paid? And well, so he called me back, and about an hour later, he said, everything's taken care of. Everything's taken care of. You got to get back to London. So I called my accountant, and sure enough, in an hour's time, they put the money in my bank. And so I flew back and in those days, you could take a flight like 11 o'clock LA time and got you in London at 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning. So I just arrived at the airport and went right to work down at the Pinewood Studios. And I went right up to Pierce Spangler's office, and he was just coming back from France, where he had to go explain to Salkind why he had to send this money to America. And when I went in his office, and Trudy was a nice kid that worked for him, I said, geez, would you go get me something? I just got off the plane, I'm kind of parched. And he and I were sitting in his, and he looked at me, he said, you know, I told him, I said, you know, I go to work every day, and every week we're supposed to get paid. I expect to get paid. Yeah, I said, you know, you've never had any problems with me on the set or anything of that nature. And if you don't know who I am, you better pick up a phone and find out, because you're about to go back to New York in my backyard. And if you play with my paycheck one more time, I'm liable to drop you in the Hudson with a camera on your head. And I pulled him across his desk, and I looked him right in the eye. And because he said, you're threatening me. I said, no, Sunshine, I'm not threatening you. I'm promising you. I dropped him back in his chair. And he actually put that in a book, The Making of Superman. But, none of us, I never had another problem with my paychecks after that. And neither did
I need to
anybody
get tips from you.
else. Neither did anyone else. So yeah, pretty well. But you know, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. But Salkinds were notorious for doing certain things like that, which is, you know, if you're doing a job and you're working every week, you're supposed to get paid. You should get paid, you know.
Yep, I agree. I'd be mad if I didn't get a paycheck, that's for sure.
Well, we sorted it out, thank God.
Well, good. Now, before being in the Superman roles, were you a fan of Superman before the movie?
I'd read the comics when I was a child, you know, because Superman was the very first American superhero, you know. was no other superheroes that were American superheroes prior to that. And so I was familiar with it. Yeah.
Now the co-stars in the films, Terrence and Sarah, how were they to work with?
Oh, brilliant. Terrence Stamp is a brilliant actor. He's, and Sarah was she was quite young and she was just coming up and you knew she had a lot of talent. She was just she was gorgeous. She fit the role perfectly. They couldn't have, I don't think they could have cast it any better. She was, and she's such a sweetheart. Sarah's an amazing lady.
And how fun was it playing a bad guy in these films?
I enjoyed it. When I'm doing Superman, I didn't really look at it as being a really bad guy, but it was like being a naughty child,
Right.
And it gave me I had a lot of fun doing the character. And like I said, it came out on screen really well. And, so we worked out pretty good. Because I had people come to me. I remember the first time I ever did a Comic-Con, and people come up to me and they said, "Oh my God, you can actually talk," and then they say, "Well, you scared the death out of me, but I loved your character," because they related to as a child. It was so even today, the younger generations, like Superman, has withstood 42 years of and it still stands out better than any other picture that was done of that nature. And I have children today still come up to me and say, "Wow, what a great character," because they relate to it as a child.
Right.
Worked out pretty well.
Did you do anything special to get ready for that role?
No, I watched Jigo a few times just to grab the way Jackie embraced his character, and I just put a mindset down. I just put myself in this character and walked down the street like it.
When you were making Superman the movie, did you have any idea how iconic the film would become, or the impact that it would have on the superhero films that would follow?
Well, we knew it was going to be a special movie because we were doing technology that no one had ever attempted before. We did the flying shots and stuff like that, and we were shooting VistaVision on VistaVision. So when you see the film and you see us flying under bridges and around buildings and stuff, and there's no wires on us, we're not doing it from a wire shot or anything on blue screen. They actually had a big 70-foot screen and pole arms that came out of it with body molds in the end. And we laid in the body molds, and we had motions that we could do in the body molds. And they shot VistaVision on VistaVision, which was a brand new type of technology that they used that really worked very well. I mean, it made the fight scenes and stuff look tremendous. So technology-wise, we broke a lot of barriers when we did Superman. And it's better than the CGI they do today.
Right. I love that movie still to this day. So I think we all do.
It worked well. It really did work well. I was very pleased with it. It was a lot of work, and it was very tedious at times. It was hard work. We had a lot of 16-hour days, boy, or time frames for doing it, because it took time to shoot certain shots the correct way. And but it really, like I said, Richard Donner was brilliant. It just worked out very well.
Do you have any funny moments from Superman behind the scenes?
Oh my God, we had so many of them. I could sit here for hours.
Do you have a favorite?
That'd be hard.
Be hard. You just had so many, huh?
We did, you had a lot of. Valerie was like a prankster, and Hackman liked to do practical jokes. We were like a family. Because when you work together for a few years like that, you become very intricated with each other. And it was, Mark McClure was such a great kid. He was young at the time, and everybody just seemed to blend and take care of each other, you know. And Christopher was very naive and young.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first big movie he ever did. And he had a lot to learn. And thank God for Richard Donner, because he got a performance out of him that there'll never be another Superman like him.
I know. I agree.
You know, for him to be able to transfer from Clark Kent to Superman as well as he did, that worked extremely well. And I think that all the Valerie Perrine was great in it. Hackman was great. I mean, they couldn't have cast the roles any better than they did. And the mixture of people and the professionalism of the actors and then even the elders that were on the set deeming everybody guilty, you know. You had some great actors, Trevor Howard and some great English actors that did cameos. So everyone involved, Maria Schell, I mean, it was just everyone involved in the picture had a prominence of their own. So you knew you were going to come up with a product that, and I remember the first time I sat in a soundstage watching, they had, the Salkinds were supposed to deliver, they got caught up doing Superman 2 to where they almost missed the delivery date for 1. So Warner Brothers said, well, you know, maybe we'll just, you know, maybe we won't pick up Superman 2. And Alexander said, really? So he put them all, he said, can I get other distributors to look at it? And they said, yeah. They thought they were being smart out. And they brought in a bunch of other distributors and everything. And they sat down and Alexander showed them the fight scenes. And I remember sitting in the theater watching this with these people at Pinewood. And Warner Brothers couldn't get the rubber bands off their money fast enough. I mean, you know, the reaction of the crowd when they saw the fight scenes just blew them right out of their chairs. You know, so you knew right then and there that we had something very special.
Good. Now, I did want to switch it up and ask you about your role in Dragnet. What was it like working with Tom Hanks and Dan Aykroyd in that movie?
Oh, it was brilliant. It was Tom's breakout movie. And Danny, of course, is Danny Aykroyd. I mean, you could watch Dragnet 50 times and you still would not get all the one-liners that were in it. You know, Danny walked around with an earpiece listening to Jack Webb all the time. So he got him down character-wise pretty good. And it was just, we had a lot of fun. It was a fun movie to do. We had a lot of laughs. And again, the character that I did worked out really well. And it was good. It was a fun movie.
Good. You have begun a whole new career as a writer, and you have one book out called Family Legacy. Tell us what the book is about.
Family Legacy is about my past. It was me as a young man, and I had a very, very famous father who was a New York mafioso, Albert Anastasia. And we decided to tell the truth about a lot of things that happened in our country. Because in the beginning, with organized crime, you had the government, industry, unions, and organized crime were all partners, and they took a lot of illicit monies and they put it back into the growth of the country. They created a lot of jobs because their main deal was gambling, loan sharking, and extortion. And if you didn't have money, how could you pay them? You couldn't pay them if you didn't have money. So they made sure you went to work. So they created the unions, and my father ran the waterfront, and they created a lot of jobs there, the construction jobs, and they invested in a lot of companies, General Electric and Sears and Roebuck and Westinghouse. And so they were very much part of developing the country all the way up to the 60s when they got thrown under the bus. So we figured it's time to tell the truth about a lot of things that happened in the country. So Family Legacy, the first book, we've got 3 other books coming out, and we're getting ready to do a mini series, and then we're going to do it'll turn into a series. And we're going to tell the truth about a lot of things that really went on in the country that everybody speculates about what happened to this and what happened to that. And it's like they just did the picture of the Irishman, which is total bogus. I mean, I knew Frank Sheeran very well, and I knew Russell Buffalino very well. And Sheeran never killed Hoffa, and he never killed Joey Gallo. And Hollywood took liberties by saying that he did. So it's time to. So our family legacy goes from my father's death to Kennedy's death, and I tell the truth about the Kennedy assassination.
Oh, wow.
So it's got there's a lot of truth that's involved. You know,
Can you tell us where we can get this book?
if you go to familylegacythenovel.com, it will take you right to Amazon, and it's
Okay.
right on Amazon.
I'll make sure we put that on a link so we can promote your book for you.
Yeah, in fact, we have a new book that'll be published in about within 60 days. There'll be another
Oh,
book
wow.
coming out, which is quite good, actually.
And
so we're going to start, and I'm collaborating with. There was a man that was partners with my father back in those days called Lucky Luciano, who put the commission together and was a very prominent mafioso. And his son is a good friend of mine. So we're putting stories together, and we're just going to really put a lot of truth out there. There's a lot of friends that are like 80, 90 years old that want to tell the truth before they pass away, you know, about things that really happened in the country.
right. Is the second book have a different name?
It's going to be Family Legacy, The Final Cut. I think
Okay.
that's the name they're going to put on it, yeah.
And you said that was 30 or 60 days?
That'll be within 60 days, yeah.
60 days. Okay. We'll make sure we promote that one too. I do have a couple questions that had come in. Michael was asking, did you do your own stunts in the Superman movies, or did you have a stunt double?
We all had stunt doubles, but I did all my own. I enjoyed, I was being an athlete and all, you know, and I just felt that there was things that your character, it works better if you can do your own stunts. Let me say that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Let's see. I have Kristen. She is asking what it was like to work with Christopher Plummer.
Well, what a super guy. God, he was he's an iconic English actor, you know, and like Terrence Stamp, you know, Christopher has been around a lot of pictures, and he's just a real gentleman. It was a lot of fun. He was a good guy. I liked him a lot.
See, from Dan, I have, was it true that Ali got him to talk to his brother out of getting into boxing?
Muhammad Ali called me up one day on the phone, and he said to me, "You got to do me a favor." And I said, "I'll do you a favor." I said, "Sign a contract to fight me." He said, "Well, I'll do that." He said, "But you know, you got to do me a favor." I said, "What's the favor?" He said, "You're fighting my brother Rockman next week, and I want to get him out of boxing. Get him out of boxing because he's embarrassing me." I said, "Are you kidding me? That's your brother?" I didn't know it was his brother. I said, "That's your brother?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh my God, I better go in the gym a couple of days." So I knocked his brother out in the 9th round or something, and he never boxed again.
I was going to ask.
I hit him, hurt him bad, and he never fought again. And because I remember I went back to the dressing room to see him, because he was a Muslim. He's the one that got Muhammad Ali into the Muslim act. And I went back to see him in the dressing room to make sure he was okay. And he looked at me and he said, "My God, you hit awful hard." I said, "God, man, what do you know about God? You're a Muslim. What are you, crazy?" And he got a laugh out of it. And yeah, Muhammad called me. I'll never forget that. Called me on the phone. "Please get my brother out of boxing."
Well, you did a good job, huh?
Yeah. He was supposed to fight me when he fought Norton. And we had a contract and everything. We were ready to go in San Diego because I was California heavyweight champion. But Norton was owned by some very, very wealthy men, Bob Byron and Art Rifkin, and they went to Chicago with a suitcase full of money and gave it to Herbert Muhammad. And all of a sudden, Ali was fighting Norton. He called me on the phone. He apologized. He said, Jack, he said, I don't know how to say this to you, but, I don't have any control over that. They made a deal with the Norton people. So, but that was the first time we were supposed to fight. There was a couple other times and it just didn't work out. But we remained good friends. We were good friends. Muhammad and I were very good friends. He was an amazing individual. I mean, to sit with him one-on-one, he was a totally different person than what people saw when he was in crowds and stuff, But he was the greatest promoter of, he promoted himself pretty well. He was a trip. But he could fight. He was a great athlete. No matter what sport he would have went into, he would have been brilliant at it. He was just a great athlete.
I have Brandon asking, is the story Terrence Stamp tells about yelling at you on set true?
He exaggerates everything. I mean, we were doing something. We were doing a shot. I think it was the White House, and I was over talking to some people, and they were asking me some questions about New York and stuff. And got into a lengthy conversation, and Terrence yelled, "Jack, you gotta get on set. We need you here now." And then he was. And when I walked around the corner, he was like trembling. Yeah, Terrence is such a good. You got to know Terrence Stamp. Terrence is a brilliant. I really had a lot of time for Terrence. I liked him a lot. He was an iconic actor. Probably one of the best English actors ever come out of England. Terrence was, when he was younger, he was like a pinup child, Women loved him. Everybody loved him. And Terry was a good guy. I like him.
I have Bradley asking, how did it feel to go from one film featuring an iconic character, that being King Kong, to working on another, and that being the Superman films?
King Kong was an interesting picture. We had a great cast and a great script. They just had a bad director. The picture did well. It would be very hard not to, but it could have been a lot better, I think, if they had a different director doing it. But it was a different kind of film, It was the storyline was totally different. Kong was, a great story, the book that had been written and stuff, and a lot different than Superman. Superman was a real person, Kong was a big ape.
Right. I have Dan stating Stamp did Jor-El on Smallville, and Reeve and Kidder were also listed to guest star on Smallville as well. Were you ever, sorry, people are asking questions. Were you ever asked to be on Smallville or any other Superman projects as a guest?
We talked about it a couple times. There was some chatter about it, but I was doing some other stuff at the time, and I was never really a big lover of television, There were a couple of television series that I could have been involved in, and I turned them down because I just didn't. I liked movies and the way movies were done compared to television. But I did some television roles as favors. People would come and say, "Well, would you lend your name to the series and do an episode of this or an episode of that?" And I did that, and they worked out very well. I mean, I get responses from people all the time about seeing Murder, She Wrote and this one and that one. And I did Freddie Dreyer's show one time because Freddie was an ex-ball player and a good guy and a friend. So I did guest star shots for people just out of friendship. I wasn't really into TV.
I think I'd rather do movies than TV as well. Just saying.
Trust me, a lot more fun.
I bet so. I also have Dan asking, what kind of sense of humor do Stamp and Douglas have in real life? They all played such great villains, and I find most actors who do these kinds of roles are very warm and funny in real life.
Oh yeah, I mean Terrence, like I said, Terrence was just an amazing individual. He was very, very talented, and and when he did Superman, he was very spiritual. He had just come back from India, and he'd been Rolfed and everything, went through a whole spiritual transition in his career. And because his brother was the manager of the Who and rock and roll bands, so Terrence was caught up in all that sex, drugs, and rock and roll stuff for a while. And he went to India to clean himself up and came back and did the Superman movie. So he was a much more relaxed, tranquil individual. And he had a great sense of humor. Terry was just a really, like a real proper Englishman, you know. And Sarah is just beautiful. Sarah's a lovely, lovely woman and very funny. You know, you have a lot of fun with Sarah. Sarah was good.
Can you tell us a little bit about going from directors Donner to Lester?
Oh, it's like night and day. I mean, my God. And it's sad that that ever happened. And it happened because the Salkinds didn't want to pay Donner. And I mean, it's just like with Brando. How do you cut Marlon Brando out of a picture?
Right.
Marlon Brando had done all the footage for Superman 2. He was already paid, but they didn't want to pay him the points. So they cut him out of the picture. And if you ever see the Donner cut's brilliant. And Brando's in the Donner cut. So it was the Salkinds. The Salkinds, the franchise would have run for 10 pictures. It would have been a much different deal. And I blame Christopher a bit, because if Christopher would have stood up and said, no Donner, no me, they would have had to bring Donner back.
Right. And
he didn't do that, and he should have, you know, because Donner made his character what it was. And it was like I said, night and day in directors. And if you watch the Donner cut, you'll see the difference.
So I assume you prefer the Donner cut over the other?
Yeah, I did, yeah. It's just sad that Dick didn't have a chance to finish it the way he wanted to. You know, but like I said, they would have went into, if he would have finished 2, he'd have done 3, 4, and 5, because he lived Superman. He loved it. I mean, he still does the comic book. You know, and he and Mankiewicz were so enthralled in the whole character and the scripts and everything. It would have been a much stronger franchise. And Salkinds were very foolish, and they walked over dollar bills to pick up pennies.
I have Brandon asking if you ever discussed defending Donner with Chris.
If I ever discuss what?
Defending Donner with Chris Reeves.
Yeah, I think a lot of us did. You know, I mean, we talked about it, but you know, he was a very naive kid then. You know, he was. They had him all hung up in this stardom stuff, and you know, became a big star because of Superman, and but he didn't realize what brought him there. You know, he had an arrogance about him that that hurt the franchise, because, like I said, all he had to do, because Hackman never came back. Hackman didn't. They used doubles. I mean, we had already shot 80% of 2. They went back and reshot a lot of it, because to put your name on the picture as a director, you have to shoot 50% or more of a picture, or you can't put your name up as a director. So we had already shot like 80% of the picture. So all of Hackman's shots were pretty much done. And the few shots that they redid, they used a double. If you look at the film clearly, you'll see the back of Hackman's head. You never see his face.
I'm gonna have to rewatch it and pay attention.
And it's so he didn't come back. I almost didn't go back, you know, but I felt, well, you know, we were there, and it was up to Christopher. If Christopher would have stood up and said, no Donner, no me, boy, they would have had no choice but to bring him back.
Right.
And they owed Lester a picture. I remember watching him when he first came on the set. I said, well, what's going to, the whisper started that they owed him a movie and they got him for cheap because they already owed him a film and stuff. And they didn't want to pay Richard Donner. And I mean, like I said, how do you cut Marlon Brando out of a picture? You know, you don't do things like that.
And they did, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
I have Dan saying the 1976 King Kong is a favorite movie of his. He wanted to tell you that he loves. I just want to tell Jack that I love the movie, and he wants to know how well you got to know Jessica Lange and Jeff Bridges.
Very well. Jeffrey and I became good friends. Jesse and I were great friends. She was, I mean, you knew she was going to be a star the first day she walked out on the set. And she was just a sweetheart. You know, she was a ballet dancer originally. She was married to Baryshnikov. She has a child with Baryshnikov. And she came into Hollywood, and she was like 26 years old, I think, at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But she had that presence. She was just a super amazing person.
Yeah, I think she's amazing. I love
I
watching
love
her.
Jessie. Jessie was a brilliant lady and a good friend.
And you still friends to this day?
Yeah, I don't see her as much as I used to years ago, but yeah, I would say we're still friends.
Now, were you a fan of the 1933 King Kong?
Actually, yeah, I like the picture. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I did the movie. You know, I liked it. I mean, the character that I did in Kong wasn't as broad as I would have liked to have been, but then there were so many characters in the cast that it still worked out pretty well. You know, so it allowed me to give myself a presence there, which worked out pretty good. You know, and there's some people that said, you know, wow, what a waste of a great actor in the character just to do a role like that I did. But it was a chance not to play a villain, you know, and it had some great moments in it that worked pretty well. Just allowed me to do what I like to do.
Dan says Kong brother. He says that. Dan also wanted to know from Superman, since they didn't bring Hackman back, is that why Ned Beatty had a reduced role in Superman 2?
I think so. There was some changes that were done. You know, Hackman, they didn't add any scenes with Hackman because he wasn't there. You know, they had to use what footage was already shot. So Ned Beatty had already done most of his stuff with Hackman. It was already done. So there wasn't anything that they could add to it. You know, so it was, yeah, I would say, yeah. And he was a great guy. Ned's a super guy. Just a fine actor. And again, a nice person. Like the whole cast of Superman was just interfaced very well. It was just a lot of good people.
Yeah, I've met quite a few of you, and you guys are all so kind. And I know we all, as Superman fans, we appreciate that because you guys are our heroes. We love watching you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Enjoyed doing it.
Now, do you do a number of cons still today, Comic Cons?
Well, nobody's doing anything right now, are they?
Well, yeah, not this year.
We're doing stuff like this, Zoom, you know.
Get right.
Yeah, I still do. When I have the time to do them, I go and do them, yeah. Because I like interfacing with the fans, and you know, and it's great to see that the picture carries as much weight today as it did when we brought it out, you know. That people still love it the same way, and it's nice to be a part of something like that.
Good. Well, I didn't see any other questions. Oh, actually, somebody just shot me one. Bradley wanted to know, how does it feel knowing that Richard Donner and Jeff Johns introduced your character to the Superman comics?
I knew he was going to do that, you know, because the character was in the original ensemble, and and Dick's just a good guy, you know. It just works out all that stuff. Whatever helped him, I would be in accordance with, you know.
I'm gonna see if anybody else has any questions. I didn't see any others pop through, so I want to give them a second. Let's see. I guess somebody's asking if, oh, they're shooting me questions. Hang on. Sorry, trying to figure this out. Okay. Is there any role that you would like to tackle? Sorry, Jack. I think you got muted there. I apologize. So I'm going to ask that over if you had any role that you would like to tackle. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to do a picture called Ballad of a Simple Man, which originally it was a classic picture done by John Ford in the 30s and won 4 Oscars back then. Victor McLaglen won leading male Oscar, and I'm going to do that role. So it's a picture very close to my heart. I wrote the script when I was doing King Kong, and in fact, there's a funny story. When I did Farewell My Lovey, I didn't have an agent, and when the picture came out, it was so well done. I said to Mitchum, you know, maybe I should probably get an agent, and he pointed to the phone book. I said, what is that about? He said, well, you think I'm going to tell you somebody, if they mess up your career, you're going to go back and yell at me? So he said, there's a bunch of them in there. So when I picked an agent, he said, good guy, ba-bum, ba-bang. And I sat down with Meyer Mishkin, who was Richard Dreyfuss's agent, and Lee Marvin, and we sat down and talked about my career and what I wanted to do. And I said, you know, I'd like to follow the footpath of Victor McLaglen, who I thought did some brilliant movies. And he looked at me, he said, well, they don't do movies like that anymore. And I said, well, then I'll just redo The Informer. And he said, you're not an actor 6 months and already going to be a producer and a writer? He said, no. So and I did. I wrote this great script, and I turned it down several times because I didn't like the mixture the studio was giving me. So we're finally going to get it done in Ireland, and it's a very good, and I'm looking forward to doing it. As soon as this pandemic stuff lets up, we're able to go back to work.
I have Elliot S. Megan asking, what can you tell us about the Kennedy assassination? He says, I promise I just bought your book, but I've got to know.
Well, you know, I tell you, it's a real simple deal. If you were to boil down and say what one person was responsible for Jack Kennedy's death, it was his father. His father made a lot of enemies of a lot of people. And Jack wasn't physically going to live out his term. He was dying. He was in bad shape. They were shooting him up every day, and he was dying of Addison's disease, which is a deterioration of your spinal canal, and he had a couple other diseases, syphilis being another one. So he was not in great shape, and his father would have rather seen him die the way he died than for him to die with a medical black mark against the family. And you'd say to yourself, well, that's awful cold, you know? But look what he did to his daughter. He lobotomized his daughter. She sat in an institution for 60 years looking out a window because she suffered from ADD before anybody knew anything what to do about ADD. And he was afraid she was going to make a spectacle of herself at one of their celebratory dinners or something, you know? So having the president of the United States go down into Dallas when there was so much animosity down there at the time. And 4 people went to see Bobby Kennedy, who was the #1 cop in the country, who was the Attorney General. And Adlai Stevenson being one of them, and said, do not let your brother go to Dallas, Texas. There's so much animosity. They just got done spitting on me in Houston. And, you know, let him go there in an open car and everything was kind of asking for trouble, and the trouble did happen, you know. But the people that they think orchestrated it didn't orchestrate it, and there's so many conspiracy theories about the mafia and the CIA, and because of the Bay of Pigs, and the Bay of Pigs was Joe Kennedy's doing, and there was just a lot of things that people were so angry about. But the people that were the most angry over Joe Kennedy, were the bankers of Geneva, because he caused the crash of 429, and it bankrupted a lot of companies in Europe. It was aimed at doing that, and they never forgave him for that, and a few other things that happened along the way. So they're the ones that actually orchestrated what happened in Dallas that day, when everyone else thinks it was the mafia and this person and that person. And they used a lot of incidents to make a presumption. And the media, of course, the whole thing was mishandled by the media, something terrible. I mean, there were 13 shots fired that day, and the Oswald theory is totally bull. Lee Harvey Oswald wasn't even in the building. And to think that someone could, with a rifle, full action rifle, make a shot that killed him is totally bogus, because first of all, his head came out the back. So if he was being shot from the window, it would have went out the front,
Right.
in the back of his head. So the guy who took the last shot was the driver of the car. And there's footage that shows that. So, you know, there's just so many, the media took advantage of something. There's so many lies that were told about it, that it's time that the truth is told. So we're going to do that. We did it.
All right. Well, I guess they are ready for our next panel, and we appreciate you coming on here and chatting with us. We all love you, and you know, Nan's gonna live on forever in the Superman world. So, and we
My pleasure.
appreciate. Yeah, we
You guys
appreciate.
have a great day.
Thank you, Jack, so much.
Okay. Take care.
You have a good day.
Bye.